stop shining like I'm Rinnegan. I smoke Mega Man. Don't come at the truth, send you back to where you came.
Yo, what's up guys? Today we're going to be answering the question, how many episodes will be in Blue Vortex Season 1? Following the interview with Studio Pierrot CEO from my last video, where he blatantly says all of their anime will be seasonal going forward, I think a lot of people have been wondering what a seasonal Boruto anime would look like. Never in the history of the Naruto franchise have we ever had a seasonal format for the show. Along with that comes a higher budget per episode, more time for the animators to work on quality animation, and likely no more anime exclusive arcs just bloating the pacing of the series. This is going to be a total shift in what we're used to seeing from Boruto, and I'm very excited. But what will the first season of Blue Vortex actually look like? How many episodes will it be? What chapters will fit in each episode? For today's video, I've written down my predictions for what I think will be in the first season of Blue Vortex. Now before we begin, I kind of have to mention the elephant in the room here. That being the fact that Part 1 technically never completed in the anime. There are still 13 chapters left to animate in Boruto Naruto Next Generations before Blue Vortex begins. For whatever reason, the anime just kind of ended prematurely and went on indefinite hiatus right before the conclusion of Part 1. All they have left to animate is the prophecy arc. I think the anime can handle this a few different ways. The first option actually seems pretty popular amongst fans, and that is making the prophecy arc into a movie to wrap up the story. Now while I would absolutely love to see another Boruto movie, I think this one's pretty unlikely for a couple of reasons. First, the prophecy arc just doesn't fit the movie format very well. It's dialogue heavy with lots of explanations and very little fighting. I think the only real fight is a short confrontation between Boruto and Kawaki, and that isn't even the climax of the arc. The climax is omnipotence. Additionally, anime movies sell really well when they are self-contained stories that introduce the character's plot and main villain for newcomers to the series. They need to be able to stand on their own, but the prophecy arc is not that at all. This arc very much relies on the watchers to have understood the previous story to really comprehend what's going on, meaning this movie would not get much reach beyond the fan base it already has, that being Boruto fans. For these reasons, I find a prophecy arc movie to be extremely unlikely, but hey, you never know. So the second option is just resuming Boruto Naruto Next Generations for the final arc. This is much more likely than the movie route. With 13 chapters left, they could probably fit that into 5 to 6 episodes and wrap up the anime really quickly. We have to get through Code finally getting his limiters removed and fighting Daemon, Amano bringing the cyborgs to the Hidden Leaf Village and giving us his backstory, Kawaki sealing Naruto away and attacking Boruto, Ada's omnipotence, and then Sasuke siding with Boruto and the Timeskip. I know it may sound like a lot, but if we actually give that proper pacing, like a seasonal anime should, then they could keep it pretty short. Anyways, whatever happens with the end of Part 1 is up to Studio Pierrot. Enough rambling about the prophecy arc. I think it's time we start talking about Blue Vortex Season 1, the Shippuden of Boruto, if you will. Starting with Episode 1, I think this opening episode will be a 1-to-1 with Chapter 1 of the manga, adapting everything up until Boruto's arrival. This episode will start by introducing all of the characters and their new timeskip designs, showing Sarada, Sumire, Kawaki and Mitsuki, Ada and Daemon, Himawari, and Team 10. It'll show Shikamaru as the 8th Hokage and Konohamaru as his right-hand man. About halfway through the episode, Code will begin his clawgram attack, and we'll get a couple extended fight scenes with Kawaki and Sarada fighting them off. Code will make his appearance, baiting out Boruto, and the episode will end with Boruto just stomping on his face and squaring off against him. Episode 2 will adapt all of Chapter 2 and most of Chapter 3. We'll get Team 10, Kawaki, and Sarada facing off against the clawgram in the first half of the episode. Soegi will get turned into a tree, hinting at the potential connection between the clawgram and the Ten Tails, and after a short conversation between Boruto and Code, Boruto will then flex his new Kenjutsu powers by slicing and dicing the clawgram like they're nothing. And then the second half of the episode will be the entirety of the Boruto vs. Code fight, with some high quality hand-to-hand animation and the Uzuhiko Rasengan to end things off. Since Chapter 3 is mostly Boruto vs. Code, I'm not really concerned about having trouble fitting these 2 chapters into just 1 episode. Now Episode 3 will adapt the rest of Chapter 3 and then all of Chapter 4. We'll get to see the conclusion of Boruto vs. Code, as well as Code's escape, and a brief Boruto vs. Kawaki encounter, but that should only take about 5 minutes because the majority of this episode is going to be the introduction of all of the Shinju. Boruto will reveal his flying Raijin and discover that the Ten Tails is missing. We'll get extended fights with Boruto against Bug, Matsuri, and especially Hidari with the sick Rasengan vs. Chidori clash to wrap things up. Jura will give his speech, and then the episode will end with that crazy Koji and Sasuke plot twist. Although Boruto vs. Code is still my favorite timeskip fight in the manga so far, I have no doubt that Studio Pierrot can make the Shinju fights look on par with it, using their new seasonal animation budget. Next up is Episode 4, which will adapt Chapter 5 and half of Chapter 6. This will be kind of like a cool-down episode, if you will. By now we've gotten lots of action out of the way to grab the viewer's attention, so we can afford to take things a bit slower now. This episode will start out with a Sasuke flashback, showing some additional scenes of Boruto and Sasuke training in the Sasuke vs. Code fight. The Shinju will get their targets, Amano and Shikamaru will discover the truth about omnipotence, and Boruto will return to the village. We'll get the Boruto-Sarada hug and some moments with them together before the episode ends with a Boruto vs. Mitsuki cliffhanger. I'm expecting this to be a pretty dialogue-heavy episode. Episode 5 was tricky for me to figure out. Ideally, this episode would adapt the rest of Chapter 6 and all of Chapter 7, but even then I'm still not sure if that's enough content for a full 20-minute episode. This will really depend on Studio Pierrot's ability to extend the Boruto vs. Mitsuki fight, which I have no doubt they're capable of doing considering the Kawaki vs. Garo chapter was extended into a whole episode before. So, episode 5 will start off with Boruto vs. Mitsuki on the rooftop. We'll get the sick flying Raijin escape, Boruto fighting Mitsuki's snake chakra, and then revealing his flight ability. Shikamaru will explain the situation to him, and then we'll get the entire Mitsuki forest fight. This is where I'm hoping for lots of extended fight scenes in the anime. We'll get Mitsuki going all out with his snake clones, and Boruto slicing them up with purple lightning, before the fight concludes with a giant thunderbolt snake lightning clash. The rest of the episode will be Boruto's talk no jutsu, explaining to Mitsuki that he's the sun, and Lord Seventh is alive and safe. The episode will end with Jura exclaiming he's ready to pay Naruto a visit. Episode 6 should adapt all of Chapter 8 in its entirety. We might need some anime canon scenes included to pad out the chapter a little bit if needed. The episode will start with Kawaki and Delta looking for Boruto's location after Ada spotted him. We'll also get the Mitsuki and Ada conversation that helps conclude Mitsuki's mini-character arc from the last episode, and characterize Ada a lot better. Following this, Jura and Hidari will begin their invasion of the Hidden Leaf Village and destroy the Jonin who confront them. This is where I'm hoping for some anime canon, because this whole section seemed way too rushed in the manga. I'd love to see how gory and brutal the Jonin deaths were instead of just skipping past it. And I'd like to get more scenes of the Shinju just exploring the village on their own. Maybe in addition to them finding the bookstore, they also find Ichiraku Ramen or Lightning Burger and try out the food. I don't know, if I'm not cooking anything here, just let me know, but I thought it'd be kinda cool. Finally, Kawaki will end up jumping the Shinju, and we'll get a cool fight between Kawaki and Jura that inevitably ends in Kawaki just getting his shit kicked in. This episode will end with Jura thinking he found Naruto, but instead being confused at the sight of Himawari, leaving a really good cliffhanger for the next episode. Finally, episode 7 should wrap up everything we have in the manga so far, meaning I believe the first 9 chapters of 2 Blue Vortex can fit into 7 20-minute episodes so far. Let me know if you think that's accurate or if I'm just off base entirely. So this episode will start with Jura talking to Team 10 and his attempt at stealing Himawari. Team 10 will get to flex their teamwork to him and save Himawari. Jura will then let off his tailed beast bomb and cause a massive explosion in the middle of Konoha, alerting everyone of the chaos going on. I'm thinking this whole situation could maybe take 5 to 10 minutes, but I don't really know. Meanwhile, we'll get Orochimaru's hideout reveal and then the embarrassing beatdown between Boruto and Kawaki, where Boruto literally suns him and mocks him for his lack of training. At this point, Kawaki's taken 4 L's in the span of 7 episodes, a pretty impressive feat, I must admit. Provided that all of that can take up most of the episode's screen time, the episode will conclude with the Kurama reveal. If not, episode 7 may need to dip a little bit into whatever happens in chapter 10 to fully conclude the episode. And those are my 2 Blue Vortex Season 1 predictions. You may have noticed that this follows the manga pretty closely. Sure, the anime may extend scenes and add a bit of extra content here and there, but I'm not predicting we'll get much in terms of anime canon. That would certainly mess with the flow of the story unless it's placed in opportune times, like the Sasuke flashback or the Shinju attack. But we're not going to be getting entire arcs worth of anime exclusive content like you could expect when Boruto was weekly. To some, that might be a downside to the timeskip being seasonal. Maybe they enjoyed stuff with Denki and Awabe or any of the other random side characters from the anime. But personally, I think this is for the best. The manga's pacing is just fine and it doesn't need extra padding and world building from the anime in order to make the story enjoyable. It's enjoyable on its own. But that's just my 2 cents. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what your predictions are for 2 Blue Vortex Season 1. With the assumption that Season 1 will be 12 episodes, I will be making an updated video once I think we've reached 12 episodes worth of content in the manga, so be on the lookout for that eventually. Smash the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new here for more Boruto content, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace out, boys.